trends. Unheard voices rise tonight. Let them speak up and shine their light. No more shadows, no more shame. Say the hurt, say the name. They ain't Superman, they're human too, and they need someone to pull them through. We cry in silence, but not tonight. Tonight we scream, we claim the right. Boy or man, hear the plea. Let me feel, let me be me. Unheard no more. We take a stand, not just a burden, not just a man.
He's drowning in a sea of be okay, but who saves the hero at the end of the day? They clap when he stands, not when he breaks. Can't show weakness, too much is at stake. Every boy told not to feel too deep, just holding in, go back to sleep. While fear and doubt eat him alive, and still he smiles to survive. This ain't weakness, this is real. This is asking just to feel. Let the boy cry, let the man rest. Let him breathe and not be less. You say man up, but unheard voices rise tonight. Let them speak, let them shine the light.
Welcome to the Unheard Voices podcast, where silence ends and the real stories begin. Today, we rip the lid off a subject most are too afraid to touch. This isn't just about growing up, it's about surviving. It's boy and man versus society. And trust me, this fight starts way earlier than you think. So if you're tired of surface-level talk, if you're ready to confront the raw, the real, the unfiltered truth, buckle up. Because this isn't just a conversation, it's a reckoning. Let's get into it.
So, have you ever found yourself caught up in, the family court system? Maybe dealing with child custody or child support negotiations, all that really difficult emotional stuff. And you kind of felt like there were things happening, maybe behind the scenes, forces you couldn't quite see, but you knew were shaping things. Well, beyond the judges and the lawyers, there's this other professional group. Often overlooked, maybe, but incredibly powerful. Their insights, their reports, they can really change the future for families, especially for boys. We're talking about social workers, and today, we're doing a deep dive into their role. It's critical, but often misunderstood. And we're looking at it through a specific lens, their impact on boys in these family court situations. Our mission today really is to get a handle on just how much influence social workers have in these really high-stakes family court cases. We're going to look into potential biases, things that might unintentionally affect boys, affect fathers. And importantly, we want to explore, actual ways to make things better. How can the system better support kids, better support families? Our insights for this, that come from some really detailed material proposed discussions between a men's rights advocate and a clinical social worker, someone with tons of hands-on experience, right, in this field. It's aimed at cutting through the noise, getting to the heart of some tough questions that affect so many people.
Yeah, what's really fascinating here, and something I think we often don't quite grasp, is how deeply connected those personal family struggles are with the big systemic structures of the courts, of the law, and social workers. They're right there at that crucial intersection. It's not just about legal fights or, who wins custody. It's really about child development, emotional health during incredibly stressful times, and, well, the future of family relationships. So understanding what they do, exactly how their influence works, it's absolutely essential. For anyone going through it or just trying to understand it, it needs a nuanced view, doesn't it? Moving past the easy answers.
Couldn't agree more. It's complex. So let's unpack this. Let's start at the beginning. When most people hear social worker, I think their mind jumps straight to Child Protective Services, right? CPS, or maybe foster care. Those really visible situations, sometimes dramatic, involving investigations of abuse or neglect, maybe even removing kids from homes. And look, that's definitely a vital, incredibly demanding part of what some social workers do, no question. But it's not the whole picture, is it? Especially when we're talking specifically about family law, child support, custody cases. So maybe you can clarify for us, for a listener, what is their actual role here in these specific situations? How do they fit in?
That's a really key distinction to make, because you're right, their function in the family court world is, well, it's broader and often more subtle than just the CPS side people might know, and very impactful. In child support and custody cases, social workers often wear several hats, you could say. They're part evaluator, part mediator, part investigator. These roles often blend together. So first, let's talk about evaluators. This is probably their most critical task in this context. They conduct these really in-depth assessments. They're looking at both parents, trying to figure out their capacity to provide a a safe, stable, nurturing home. And this isn't just a quick look around, it's deep. They look at living situations, parenting styles, strengths, weaknesses, and critically, the emotional and physical well-being of the kids with each parent. They might use interviews, observations, sometimes even standardized tests. They're trying to gauge stability, consistency, emotional availability. Can each parent meet this specific child's needs?
Okay, so that's the evaluation part. You also mentioned mediation.
Right, mediators. In this role, they're trying to help parents talk constructively. The goal is to help them reach agreements themselves, agreements about custody, about visitation schedules, ideally without a big, drawn-out court battle. This mediation piece is so important because, well, conflict is terrible for kids. We know that. So if they can help parents cooperate, find solutions together, that's huge. It empowers parents, lets them shape the outcome for their own family, rather than just having a judge decide everything.
And the third role, investigation.
Yes, the investigative role. This really underpins the other two, evaluation and mediation. This is where they dig deep into the family dynamics. It means doing lots of interviews, not just with the parents, but crucially with the children themselves. They'll talk to kids of different ages, maybe using play techniques with younger ones, having more direct conversations with teens. They're trying to understand the child's needs, their perspective, and depending on age and maturity, sometimes their preferences about where they want to live, how they want to spend time. It's about giving the child a voice, in a process where they often feel like decisions are just happening to them.
Okay, so if they're investigating, it sounds like they're talking to the parents, the kids. Are they looking beyond the immediate household too? Like talking to teachers or looking at records?
Oh, absolutely. A good investigation goes well beyond just the parents and kids in the home. They need the full picture. So yeah, they'll often gather information from other relevant people and records. That could mean talking to teachers, school counselors, finding out how the child is doing academically, socially, maybe speaking with doctors or therapists about any health needs, physical or mental, reviewing those records. Sometimes they might even interview extended family, neighbors, coaches, childcare providers, anyone who knows the child well. The goal is always this holistic sort of 360-degree view of the child's world and the factors affecting them. And once they have all this information, which can take weeks, sometimes months to gather, they compile it all and formulate detailed recommendations. These recommendations go straight to the judge. And they can cover everything: who gets primary custody, what kind of joint custody might work, very specific visitation schedules, and sometimes, yeah, even things that indirectly affect child support because they determine how many overnights parent has.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack this. It sounds like social workers are essentially the court's eyes and ears on the ground then, gathering all this crucial, really nuanced information that ends up shaping entire family futures. It's not just a minor report, it sounds foundational.
That's a perfect way to put it. Eyes and ears on the ground. It really captures the weight of their influence. And yeah, their reports carry enormous weight. There's a very practical reason judges rely on them so heavily. Think about it. A judge in a courtroom, they have very limited time with the family. It's formal, structured. They hear lawyers argue. They look at documents. But the social worker, they spend much more time, direct time, often in the family's home, seeing natural interactions, conducting multiple interviews over time, sometimes showing up unannounced. This detailed, hands-on assessment gives the court insights they just can't get otherwise. They see the nuances, the family dynamics, the parental capacities, the child's real feelings, things that get lost in formal court proceedings.
I see. So it provides a depth that the judge just doesn't have access to.
Precisely. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights that social workers aren't just passive observers writing things down. They are active, really influential participants in shaping the outcome. Their recommendations, built on all that detailed work, often become the bedrock for the judge's final decision. They provide the human context, the lived reality, the emotional undercurrents that legal arguments might miss entirely. So yeah, their role isn't just important, it's pivotal. It really sets the course for a family after separation or divorce.
It really makes you think, though, with that much influence, are there potential blind spots? Are there aspects of a child's well-being that maybe get missed? One thing you hear a lot, and it's often from fathers or advocates for boys, it's this deep concern that their son's emotional needs, especially that need for a strong male role model, get ignored
Mm.
or at least downplayed. There's this perception of a mother-centric bias in the system. Is that a fair criticism?
It is. It's a tough criticism, but I'd say, unfortunately, yes, it's often a fair one. There's definitely truth to it. Traditionally, and frankly still in many places, the family court system, and by extension, some social work practices supporting it, have operated with this kind of mother-centric leaning. Now, it's not usually about conscious bias or malice. It's more a historical thing, right? This long-held belief, going back generations, that kids, especially young kids, primarily need their mothers. It comes from a time when gender roles were much more rigid. Mothers were the caregivers, fathers were the providers. That was the model. And even though society has changed massively, shared parenting involved dads, some of those old assumptions have been really slow to change within institutions like family courts.
So this traditional view kind of persists.
It can, yeah. And the problem is when that traditional belief gets applied like a blanket rule without really looking at the specific family or the specific needs of the child involved. And for boys specifically, the need for a strong, consistent, positive relationship with their father, it's often not given the weight it deserves within that old framework. It's not just about dad paying the bills or showing up for birthdays. It's about modeling healthy masculinity, teaching resilience, showing how to manage emotions, how to navigate the world as a male. Boys need that guidance, and often their fathers are uniquely positioned to provide it. So when the system defaults, even subtly, to a mother-centric view, it can sideline the father's role and, crucially, diminish those really important developmental benefits for the boy.
Okay, so let's push on that bias point a bit more, specifically with custody decisions. Is it sometimes just sort of expected that boys will end up living primarily with their mothers, almost like a default setting, even if maybe the father could offer a more stable home or perhaps is better tuned into the boy's specific emotional needs at that time? Does that implicit bias still play out?
Unfortunately, yes. It really does. Now, I want to be clear. There's been progress. A lot of dedicated professionals are working hard against this. But implicit bias, yeah, it absolutely still exists, especially maybe in older court systems or sometimes among professionals whose training hasn't kept pace with modern understandings of child development and, frankly, the importance of fathers. You still see situations where the underlying assumption, maybe unspoken, is that mom gets primary custody. It's not always conscious discrimination, like someone saying fathers are less important. It's often more subtle. These ingrained norms that have been around forever just kind of steer things.
Can you give an example of how that might look subtly?
Sure. Okay, imagine a social worker interviewing both parents. Maybe the father is quieter, more reserved, approaches emotional topics in a very practical, problem-solving way. The social worker might unconsciously interpret that quietness as detachment or a lack of emotional warmth. Meanwhile, the mother might be more outwardly expressive, verbalizing feelings more readily. The same social worker might see that as proof of a stronger bond, deeper care, even if both parents are equally loving, equally capable. See? It's not about who's better, but how gendered expectations about emotional expression can subtly tilt the scales. So this ongoing struggle means, yeah, a boy's best interests might get overlooked because of these old gender assumptions. A dad might have a more stable job, a better support network, maybe a really strong connection with his son around shared interests that are vital for that boy. But if the default thinking is still kind of stuck on moms are the primary nurturers, then the evaluation can get skewed, and the outcome might not be what's truly best for that specific boy. It's like systemic inertia.
Right. It's the system itself, not necessarily individuals being intentionally biased.
Often, yes. And that's precisely why there's such an urgent need for more specific, updated training for social workers in family law, training specifically on boys' emotional development, how male identity forms. Without that, the system just keeps perpetuating these biases that can be really harmful. Harmful to boys, harmful to their relationships with their fathers. General child development knowledge isn't enough. We need that deeper, gender-aware understanding. It's not just about fairness to dads, it's about getting the best outcomes for boys.
This is where it gets really interesting because we're digging into these deep-seated assumptions, these systemic things that might actually be hurting boys. It goes beyond just being fair to fathers, so that's important too. It's about the development of these young men navigating really complex emotional stuff, maybe without the support the system should be providing.
Exactly. It raises this huge question about how our accepted norms, things we don't even question sometimes, might be inadvertently blocking critical aspects of development, especially for boys who are already dealing with so much around identity and emotions. It's a massive blind spot we really need to confront.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly, but stay connected. Let's talk about child support. Because this is another area where you hear so much frustration. Again, often from fathers. The complaint often goes like this. I'm paying really high child support, but I barely get to see my kids. I feel like an ATM, not a dad. They feel like they're just financial providers, cut off from the day-to-day parenting. How do social workers fit into that dynamic? Do their recommendations impact the money side too?
Yeah, that's a very common and honestly a very understandable frustration. It really highlights how intertwined custody and money are in family law. Now, first, let's be clear. Social workers don't directly set the dollar amount for child support. That's usually the court, following state guidelines. And those guidelines heavily consider two main things: parental income and, crucially, how much time each parent spends with the kids specifically. Overnight visits usually count the most. But here's the connection. Social workers' recommendations about custody and visitation schedules, they directly and massively impact that child support calculation.
Okay, so the custody recommendation feeds into the support formula.
Exactly. Think about it. If a social worker recommends sole physical custody to mom, or a schedule where dad only has the kids, say, every other weekend, that automatically limits dad's overnight time significantly. And in the eyes of the child support formula, he becomes primarily the financial provider, the non-custodial parent. The less official parenting time you have on paper, often the higher your child support obligation becomes, even if incomes are similar. So while we're not punching numbers into the support calculator, our custody recommendations are often the key input that determines those numbers. It's a critical link people sometimes miss when thinking about the social worker's role, and it fuels that feeling of being just a wallet.
So what does this all mean for the boys themselves? Forget the parents' feelings for a second. What's the impact on the kids? It sounds like they're the ones really losing out on crucial connections. If a boy only sees his dad, say, twice a month, like a typical old-school visitation plan, that really gets in the way of building a deep, consistent relationship, doesn't it? The dad becomes more like a fun uncle who visits. Rather than being there for the mundane stuff, the homework, the bedtime chats, the random advice moments that really build bonds.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that imbalance you're describing, it should raise huge red flags for anyone focused on the child's best interests. You end up with this setup where one parent, often the father, might be carrying a heavy financial load, making sure the child's material needs are met, but they're simultaneously pushed to the margins when it comes to the actual day-to-day parenting, the relationship building, the emotional support that's so vital. And for boys, this can be incredibly damaging. They need that consistent male presence, that guidance, that role model for navigating life. When dad is reduced to a visitor, all those essential interactions, the casual advice, the shared hobbies, just being there, they get lost or seriously limited.
Yeah, I can see that.
And what's fascinating here is how these things we think of as separate custody time, child support payments, they actually combine to shape a child's entire reality, their relationships. It's not just about money or schedules. It's about presence, influence, connection. Boys thrive with meaningful, consistent time with both parents. That's not just, a nice idea. It's a developmental necessity. For a boy to build a healthy identity, feel secure, learn emotional expression, he needs regular interaction with his dad. When the system, maybe unintentionally through its recommendations, creates this primary parent visiting parent dynamic, it misses a huge chance to foster healthier outcomes for the child.
So what's the alternative then?
Well, this is where I strongly believe social workers need to be much more proactive in championing shared parenting models, making that the starting point, the preferred approach, whenever it's safe and feasible. This means moving away from that old default assumption of one main caregiver. It means actively promoting the idea that both parents are essential for a child's overall well-being. It's not about forcing a rigid 50-50 split on everyone because every family is different, but it's about shifting the mindset, the legal framework, to recognize and support the value both parents bring. And for boys, this is especially key. Equal, or at least substantial, involvement from both parents gives them diverse perspectives, strengthens bonds, helps them see healthy relationships modeled. It builds resilience.
Okay, that makes sense. Shifting the default toward shared parenting. Let's circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the idea of outdated views or gaps in training. You said social workers might not have enough specific training on boys' needs. Can we dig into that a bit more? What kind of training do they typically get for these family law cases? Is it just general child psychology, or is there anything tailored to boys or father loss or these gender dynamics we're discussing?
To be perfectly honest, generally not nearly enough specific training. And admitting that is important if we want to fix the gaps. Social work education absolutely provides a solid base in general child development. You learn the stages, common issues, trauma impacts, all of that. It's crucial.
Hmm.
But there's often a significant lack of deep, specific focus on boys. It's almost like the generic child in the textbooks is assumed to be gender neutral or maybe implicitly female. So the unique challenges, the different ways boys might process emotions, the specific pathways of male development, they often don't get the explicit attention they need. And in family court, where gender is so often a factor, that's a major oversight.
So what specific areas are missing? What should be in that training?
Okay, several critical things come to mind. First, there's often very little dedicated training on father law specifically, and how that impacts boys differently than girls. Research tells us a father's absence, physical or emotional, can hit boys particularly hard. Higher risks for behavioral problems, emotional regulation issues, academic struggles, trouble forming healthy relationships later on. But is that a core focus in the training? Often, no. Then there's the huge issue of male emotional suppression. How society basically trains boys from day one to hide feelings, be tough, don't cry. This conditioning makes it incredibly hard for them to open up during something like a custody evaluation, especially to a stranger asking personal questions. They might shut down, act out, not express their real needs. Social workers need specific skills to navigate that. And finally, the vital importance of male mentorship and role models, not just the father, but other positive male figures. How important that is for guiding boys, showing them healthy ways to be men. These are really key areas, and they're often just. It's missing, or only touched on briefly, in the standard training for social workers heading into family law. It leaves a big gap in understanding the very children they're trying to help.
Wow. This really shines a light on how these broader societal norms about boys needing to be strong, girls being more emotional, how they can actually filter down and cause harm within the very systems meant to protect kids.
Yeah.
You mentioned boys being conditioned to suppress emotion. Does that societal pressure directly impact how they actually behave during these evaluations? Do they just shut down?
Oh, absolutely. It impacts them profoundly, and often in ways that work against their own best interests. You hit it exactly. Society hands boys the script. Be stoic, handle it, don't show weakness. So when they're in a high-stress evaluation, that conditioning kicks in. They might see the social worker's questions not as a chance to share, but as a test. Can they hold it together? Can they be strong? So they disengage. They mask their real feelings because opening up feels risky, weak, maybe even like it would betray a parent or make things worse.
Yeah, right. Can you share what that looks like in practice?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it countless times in evaluations. Boys who just completely shut down emotionally. They give one-word answers, shrugs, I don't know. They stare at the floor. They become totally unresponsive. It's not usually because they don't have feelings or opinions. They're often churning inside. Loyalty conflicts, fear, sadness, missing a parent intensely. But they feel they can't show it. Maybe they think it'll hurt mom if they say they miss dad, or vice versa. Maybe they just feel overwhelmed and fall back on that be strong programming. They might be desperate for things to be different, but they can't articulate it.
And the consequence of that shutdown is?
The consequence is their voice gets lost. Their actual needs, their fears, their preferences. They don't make it into the report or into the judge's understanding. And when that happens, when we miss or misinterpret a child's core emotional state because they couldn't express it in a way we recognized, that is a huge failure. A failure of the system and, yeah, a failure of our profession. We're supposed to be their advocates. If we can't get past these barriers, our own potential biases, lack of specific understanding, the societal pressures on the boy, then we're failing them fundamentally.
Yeah.
And potentially leading to outcomes that aren't right for them at all.
That connects everything back, doesn't it? It highlights this really alarming blind spot. We might be missing a boy's silent plea for help or his deep need for his dad just because we haven't learned how to listen to the way boys communicate distress, often non-verbally.
Precisely. It's not just about needing another module in training. It's about fundamentally understanding how male development works under stress within these systems.
Okay, so we've laid out the problems, the gaps, the biases. Let's pivot to solutions. What can actually be done? What concrete steps can social workers, the courts, the whole system take to better support boys in these really tough situations? What does a better path forward look like?
Right, moving from problems to solutions. This is key. And there are concrete things. First, and I think this is non-negotiable, Mandatory ongoing training on gender-specific needs. For every single social worker involved in family law, this can't be optional. It has to be core, and it needs to be deep. Really understanding the long-term impact of fatherlessness on boys, the psychology, the emotions, even the neurobiology, going beyond just statistics to understand the lived experience.
What else should that training cover?
It absolutely needs to cover how boys process and show emotional trauma differently, moving past the idea that distress looks the same in everyone. Boys might externalize anger, acting out, withdrawal instead of crying or talking about sadness. Social workers need skills to see behind that behavior. Training needs to equip them to identify and address that emotional suppression we talked about. How do you create safety for a boy to share, even when everything tells him not to? This means learning specific interviewing techniques, maybe using play, connecting through interests, ways to build rapport with boys who are guarded.
Okay, mandatory specific training. What's next?
Second, reinforcing what we discussed. Really emphasizing and promoting shared parenting models as the starting point, the preferred approach, whenever safe and appropriate. Again, not forcing 50-50 on everyone, but shifting the fundamental mindset. Recognizing both parents are vital, actively promoting that concept. Especially for boys, ensuring they get that consistent male involvement is just crucial for their development. Moving away from the primary parent-visitor-parent model towards genuine co-parenting.
That makes sense. And a third point.
Third, and it sounds simple, but it's massive. Actively, genuinely listening to boys during interviews, suspending judgment, validating their experience, not making assumptions based on old norms or biases, creating a space where they feel truly heard, even if what they say is complicated or challenging or doesn't fit expectations. Don't dismiss a boy wanting to live with his dad just because boys usually go with mom. Really hear him. Recognize loyalty conflicts might be present, but don't invalidate his core message. The impact of being truly heard. It's huge. It validates them, empowers them, and ensures their voice actually shapes the decisions about their life.
Those are great points. There's another recommendation I've heard discussed, and it seems really relevant here: the need for more male social workers. The field is, let's face it, overwhelmingly female, which isn't a criticism of female social workers at all, but does that imbalance itself potentially create issues for boys navigating the system? Could having more men in the profession help bridge some of these gaps we're talking about?
Absolutely. Emphatically, yes. Representation matters. It matters hugely in social work, just like it matters in teaching or healthcare. Having more male social workers isn't just about ticking a diversity box. It's about providing a different kind of connection, a potentially vital one, for boys who might find it easier to open up to a male professional. Think about a teenage boy dealing with puberty, identity, his parents splitting up, maybe struggling with ideas about masculinity. He might find it incredibly hard to talk about his feelings about his dad or his own vulnerabilities with a female social worker, however skilled and empathetic she is. He might just perceive a gap in understanding. A male social worker might offer a different kind of rapport, maybe understand certain pressures or experiences more intuitively.
So it's about relatability and perspective.
Exactly. Male social workers can bring a different perspective. They can serve as relatable figures. They've navigated boyhood and manhood themselves. They might offer a unique kind of male mentorship right there in the professional setting, which could be huge for a boy missing stable male figures. Again, this is not saying female social workers aren't effective with boys. Many are absolutely fantastic. But having more men just broadens the available tools, the potential connection points. It makes the system more likely to meet the specific needs of all children. It's a really practical, important step towards making family law truly child-centric and specifically making sure boys' needs aren't overlooked.
This has been incredibly insightful, a really deep and I think very honest conversation about something that affects so many families, often silently. Our goal here ultimately is to find ways forward, ways to better support boys, support fathers, support entire families as they navigate the really difficult terrain of family law, making sure the system's designed to help actually deliver. And if you're listening to this, maybe you're a dad fighting for time with your son, or maybe you're a young man who's been through this or is going through it now, please know this: you are not invisible. Your needs, your experiences, they matter. Your voice deserves to be heard in these processes. The issues we talk about today, they're real. And bringing them into the open, talking about them honestly, that's the first step towards making things better. Your feelings are valid.
And perhaps as we think about all this, the need for nuance, for specific support for boys in family law, it pushes us to ask a broader question. Where else? Where else in our society might these traditional, maybe unexamined gender expectations be inadvertently holding back our kids, boys or girls? How can we get better at seeing and dismantling those hidden barriers? barriers that might be affecting their emotional health, their development in ways we haven't fully recognized. It's really a challenge to look deeper past the surface and question the assumptions that shape our institutions and ultimately shape our children's futures. How do we help every child truly flourish?
That's a powerful thought to end on, a really crucial challenge for all of us. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep asking questions, keep digging deeper, keep thinking critically about these vital social issues. Until next time.
Please like, comment, and subscribe. Unheard Voices Podcast.
He's drowning in a sea of BOK, but who saved the hero at the end of the day? They clap when he stands, not when he breaks. Can't show weakness, too much is at stake. Every boy told not to feel too deep, just hold it in, go back to sleep. While fear and doubt eat him alive, and still he smiles to survive. This ain't weakness, this is real. This is asking just to feel. Let the boy cry, let the man rest. Let him breathe and not be less. You say man up, but that don't heal the battles he fights.